Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot coming at you with my review of It Chapter 2. Um, so, uh, First and foremost, I really did intend to have a retro review of It Chapter 1 up before doing this, but time just got away from me. So, sorry, everyone. So, if you haven't seen It Chapter 2, well, this is going to have, or It Chapter 1, I mean, this is going to have some spoilers for that one. So, It Chapter 2 focuses on the Losers Club, just as the first one did. We're now all grown up, most of whom have moved away from Derry. But they're called home to fight the child-eating monster from their childhood, which they refer to simply as It. So, quick takes on it. It's honestly one of the better Stephen King adaptations. And trust me, there have been some really bad ones. One of which came out this year. Most of the changes from book to movie actually work pretty well. There's one that I'll get into later that I don't think works as well, but yeah. The lead cast is great. I mean, yeah, they put together probably one of the best ensemble casts I've seen in a long while. I would say the movie is definitely worth watching, though it's definitely not for the faint of heart. So, cast of note, we've got James McAvoy as Bill Denbrough. He was, as a child, he was the leader of the Losers Club. His younger brother Georgie was killed at the beginning of its late 80s spree. He's not a successful writer, though everyone pretty much hates how his books end. And Jaden Martell reprises his role from the last movie as young Bill. Jessica Chastain as Beverly Marsh, who was the sole female member of the Losers Club. Abused by most of the men in her life over time, including both her father and now her husband. She has since leaving Derry become a fashion designer. And Sophia Lillis returns as young Bev. We got Jay Ryan as Ben Hascombe, formerly overweight member of the Losers Club, turned actually fit and trim architect. He's had a crush on Bev since they were kids. And Jeremy Ray Taylor reprises his role from the last movie as young Ben. Bill Hader as Richie Tozier, loud and foul-mouthed member of the Losers Club, turned stand-up comic. And Finn Wolfhard of Stranger Things returns to play young Richie in flashbacks. Isaiah Mustafa as Mike Hanlon, the only member of the Losers to remain in Derry, and in doing so was able to actually potentially find a way to defeat it. Chosen Jacobs returns as young Mike. James Ransone as Eddie Kasprak, who's a hypochondriac member of the Losers Club, who has become a successful risk assessor in New York City. Jacqueline Grazer returns to the role of young Eddie as well. Also, we got Andy Bean as Stanley Uris, who's a Jewish member of the Losers Club, turned partner at an accounting firm in Atlanta. Wyatt Olaf also reprises his role as young Stanley. Next up, we've got Bill Skarsgård as the Pennywise the Dancing Clown form of It. So It is an evil entity older than time. It feeds for 27 years, generally on children because their fears are more easy to process and take on the form of. After all, dying alone and forgotten is not the easiest thing to turn into shapeshift into, as It is capable of doing. It has also it has psychic abilities, hence being able to figure out, oh, that's what you're afraid of. Well, let me just turn into that right quick. And knows a lot. In 1989, the Losers defeated it, but did not kill it. Teach Grant is Henry Bowers, who's a psychotic bully that's manipulated by it into returning to Derry to help it deal with the Losers, who Bowers and his friends frequently clashed with when they were younger. And Nicholas Hamilton reprises his role from It Chapter 1 as young Henry. Alright, moving on to the spoiler-free breakdown. So, the movie begins at the Derry Carnival. It's 2016. Anyway, Don Haggerty and Adrian Mellon are attacked for being gay by some Derry locals, who, after beating the shit out of Adrian Mellon, toss him into the canal. Don tries to run down to basically save his boyfriend from the water, and ends up seeing Pennywise drag Mellon out and then kill Mellon. And Mike hears over the police scanner about Mellon's death and goes to investigate it as well. And he finds the remains of a red balloon, as well as "Come Home" written on one of the nearby bridge supports, in blood, I might add. So Mike then calls up the Losers, convinces them all to return to Derry. So the Losers all return and they slowly begin to remember the time they spent in Derry. It's like they knew that's where they were from, but they didn't really remember about it. Like, yeah, I'm from Derry, but I don't really remember too much of it. But when they come back, the memories first start to trickle back. But yeah, after the group has dinner, Mike tells Bill about what he's learned concerning it in the intervening years, including potential means to stop it, the ritual of Chud. And so part of the ritual involves going out and getting mementos. Mementos to be sacrificed as part of the ritual. So they all go off on their own to get various mementos, which leads to each one having flashbacks to when they were kids during its 1989 spree. While this is going on, it, in the form of the corpse of Patrick Hochstetter, who was one of Henry Bowers' friends, helps Bowers escape from Juniper Hill Mental Asylum and return to Derry, so that he can potentially kill the Losers before they can kill it. Anyway, so the Losers have a run-in with Bowers, and once that's over with, they go to 29 Newbold Street so they can enter the sewers there, and then make their way to its lair where they perform the ritual of Chud, or at least plan to. And of course, yeah. And then the movie, and well, then there's that. That's that. So, okay. So before I get to the ups and downs, I'm going to put one thing out there right now. I do not like the fact that they changed the time frame of it from being mid to late 50s and mid 80s to late 80s, mid 2010s. There's so much that has changed that things just don't work as well as they don't work as well for the story, basically. So yeah, to be perfectly honest, that's something we'll get into at a later date in a later video. So, so first up, the lead cast, namely the Losers Club, is perfect. And like I said, probably one of the best ensembles I've seen in quite some time. Like, we're talking Avengers or Guardians of the Galaxy level ensemble cast. This this actually kind of felt more like the book than the first movie did. Well, one thing to understand with the book is that it kind of just goes all back and forth between now 85 and the late 50s, and this actually works in a similar manner with all the with during the when they're searching for mementos, remembering things from the past. Which also allowed them to reuse the cast that played the losers, the actors who played the losers in the first movie. This I was kind of glad, I was glad to see that the rumors about how Mike would be portrayed in the movie were wrong. The rumors being that he was going to be a junkie. There's maybe some hints that he's not as upstanding a person as he is in the book, but it's never. We don't see a spoon for cooking not crack for. We don't see a heroin spoon. We don't see, a mirror with a razor blade on it. We don't see a syringe and belt combo. There's nothing there to. There's nothing. No. Not so subtle hints. You get the feeling maybe he may have tried a few things in his time, but I wouldn't go so far as to say he's becoming an addict, like many early reports. And in fact, some reports that were some things were coming up, as recently as this past week, claimed. And I think it's an especially good thing because I feel like the character kind of got turned into just the token black kid in the first movie. When the effects in this, moving on, when the effects are good, they are good. And to be perfectly honest, even when they're not good, they're still pretty far from bad. So, Speaking of which, there's a scene which shows basically a person with a flaming skull, and it looks better than any live-action rendition of Ghost Rider to date. Like, that's how Ghost Rider should look. Like I mentioned before, a lot of the changes actually worked pretty well. There's, not all of them landed, but that's for something that's different. The Stephen King cameo was fun, and it was nice to see a King cameo in a Stephen King adaptation. Because Pet Sematary didn't have one. I don't recall him popping up in It Chapter 1 either, so. On the downside of things, I feel like the introduction of Bill's wife and Bev's husband really kind of seemed pointless, as the entire subplot with the two of them was just gone. This is one. The subplot basically is that both Bill's wife Audra and Bev's husband Tom follow their respective significant others to Derry, And in fact, Tom kidnaps. Tom falls under the influence of it, kidnaps Audra, and takes her to it. But upon seeing its true form, he dies of shock. Whereas, and Audra just goes catatonic, and that is what gets Bill to come down. That's what gets Bill and the losers to go after it. Um, but yeah, it's like they have these moments with these characters just to say, oh hey, here's that character. You're never going to see them again. And to be perfectly honest, really, I feel like, I mean, yes, there was more of a point with Bev's husband. If anything, just to show she's in an abusive relationship. And to be perfectly honest, all you really had to do was, have her arrive. Maybe she's wearing her hair over, the side of her face, and she moves the hair. Her hair moves somehow, and you see a bruise, and like, oh, maybe it even gets mentioned, but yeah, no. Now, with the fact that the two characters were introduced and certain other things in the movie, I'm kind of hoping that that subplot was filmed and basically just cut out because, as it is, the movie is, a little more than 10 minutes shy of 3 hours long. So yeah, I would not be surprised. Okay, I'm kind of hoping that there's an extended version come out down the road that'll have, or a supercut of chapter 1 and an extended version of 2, and which will have the Audra Denbrough Tom Rogan subplot. Another problem I was there was just some little inconsistencies, namely involving Richie. The big one that got me is when the losers are making their way into 29 Nabalt Street. I don't even remember what it is Richie says, but Bev says to him, "Beep beep, Richie." Which, okay, great, I mean, they said that to him in the books all the time, or in the book all the time. But in the first movie, "Beep beep, Richie" gets said once by it, and not when Bev's around. So yeah. The other thing, I don't recall Richie ever being called Trash Mouth in the first book, or in the first movie. Not first book. There's only one it book. But in the first movie, I don't recall Richie ever being called Trash Mouth yet. After his phone call from Mike, he goes to do a stand-up bit, and he starts to tell a joke. He forgets it, but he stumbles through and brings up Trash Mouth. Like, I'm Trash Mouth. My nickname's Trash Mouth, and I was like, really? Well, is it though? But yeah, just little things like that. There were other inconsistencies between the two, which kind of were, yeah. Its final form, I mean, okay, I guess the way I was gonna, it's supposed to, the final form that it takes is supposed to be scary, but it comes off as being more goofy. Now, I'll admit, it was at least of a better quality than the final form in the 1990 TV movie. I mean, much better quality. But it still just, it didn't look scary. It's like, really, you guys are scared of that? Yeesh. So anyway, moving on though to my overall opinion of the movie and how I'm rating this. So first off, it's an excellent continuation of the first movie, and to be perfectly honest, I think it's honestly a better movie than the first one. Combined with Chapter One, this is definitely one of the better Stephen King adaptations. Not in terms of accuracy, but in how it tells the story, in how well it tells the story compared to the book. To horror fans, and especially Stephen King fans, I would highly recommend this. So my final rating for the movie, I gotta go with 3.5 out of 5. I know I've been gushing about it quite a bit, but there are enough I have enough issues with the movie that it just that it yeah I can't go any higher than 3.5 out of 5 because it's still good. So but yeah. Anywho, that's it for now. As always, feel free to like, share, subscribe. Hit the bell icon to be notified when I put new content. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off saying, live long and rock hard.